At Christmas, my brother hit my son for a minor mistake, and my father dismissed it as just a slap. Today, I watched the police handcuff my brother in court. I want to share exactly what happened, so others can understand how a family gathering spiraled into a legal nightmare. I'm Adam Walker, a 39-year-old architect living in Portland. I'm a single father raising my 13-year-old son, Noah, after my divorce from Claire 4 years ago. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment in the Pearl District, a modest space made comfortable with care, including a small studio where I work from home. My life is simple but purposeful. Every decision I make revolves around Noah's well-being. Today should have been a moment of celebration. Noah won first place in his school's music competition for an original song, a remarkable achievement after years of lessons, practice, and dedication. Watching him carry his guitar onto the stage, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. His talent, his perseverance, and his ability to stay calm under pressure were remarkable. On the drive home, he marveled at his small trophy. But beneath that joy, I could sense a quiet tension, a lingering memory of the Christmas gathering at my parents' home nearly 3 years ago. That event had planted seeds of resentment and envy within my family, a lesson that some blood ties are not worth preserving. In December 2024, I agreed to attend the Christmas party at my parents' house in Portland. It had been over a year since our last visit, and my mother had repeatedly urged me to bring Noah. She emphasized the importance of family connections, insisting that Noah shouldn't miss the tradition, though I often felt that her concern was more for appearances than for his safety. On the afternoon of December 24th, we arrived at my parents' comfortable, familiar house. Noah, then 11, gently clutched his Gibson guitar, occasionally stroking the case with reverence. Before we stepped out of the car, I looked at him and said softly, "If you feel uncomfortable, we can leave at any time." His small hand tightened around mine. "I'll be fine, Dad. I want to play for Grandma," he whispered. That moment, his bravery and excitement mixed with nervousness, stayed with me, a reminder of the courage children can show, even in the face of tension. From the moment we walked in, the atmosphere was suffocating. Brandon, my older brother, and his wife Karen were seated with Patrick, Brandon's business partner, while Tyler, Brandon's son, wore his usual indifferent expression. My mother greeted us with an overly enthusiastic smile that didn't reach her eyes. Before Noah could respond to her praise about his scholarship at the Portland Music Center, Brandon's sarcasm cut sharply through the room. "So, the family prodigy has arrived. The world should pause to listen." Noah froze beside me, his small frame tense. I gently squeezed his shoulder, silently reassuring him that everything would be okay. The evening progressed under a veneer of forced civility. Brandon dominated conversations with tales of million-dollar contracts and business triumphs, with Patrick echoing him, reinforcing a sense of superiority that made the air thick with unease. Noah sat quietly, eyes fixed, occasionally on his guitar in the corner. I knew he had agreed to come only because he wanted to perform, nothing more. After dinner, my mother announced, "Now, Noah will play a song for us." I've been waiting for this moment. Encouraged by my nod, Noah stepped forward, carrying the Gibson. His fingers trembled as he prepared to play, taking a deep breath before starting a rearranged version of Silent Night. The room fell silent. My mother beamed. Tyler observed with curiosity. Only Brandon and Patrick exchanged smirks as Noah missed a note or two. Then, abruptly, Brandon waved him to stop. The living room went still. "Playing this horribly and calling this a prodigy?" Brandon shouted. Noah froze mid-chord, small fingers gripping the strings tightly. Before I could intervene, Brandon, intoxicated and furious, struck Noah across the face. Blood appeared at the corner of my son's lips. "You don't talk back to me," Brandon roared. Then, with shocking violence, he smashed the Gibson on the floor. The vintage instrument, a gift from my late grandfather Henry, shattered completely. Watching my child hurt and the guitar destroyed, I felt a surge of uncontrollable anger. I struck Brandon twice before Patrick could intervene. The room descended into chaos, fists and screams, until others finally restrained us. My parents looked on, stunned and judgmental. "You've lost your mind, Adam," my mother cried. I pointed to Noah and the broken guitar. "Brandon struck my child and destroyed Grandpa Henry's guitar. And you're worried about him?" My father dismissed it. "It's just a slap, and the guitar can be replaced. You overreacted." I pulled out my phone, hands trembling. "I will call 911. Assaulting a child and destroying property is not minor." Brandon's expression changed as he realized the police were coming. My parents tried to intervene, but I remained resolute. "My son was hit until he bled. This isn't about family business anymore," I said, dialing 911. Police and ambulance arrived. Officers documented Noah's injuries and the shattered guitar. Brandon was detained for assault and property destruction. Noah received immediate care, and I reassured him, "Let's wait for the ambulance outside, son." Later, at the police station, a social worker named Rachel helped Noah process the incident. I filed the formal report, ensuring that Noah's safety was prioritized. At Christmas, my brother hit my son for a minor mistake, and my father dismissed it as just a slap. Today, I watched the police handcuff my brother in court. I want to share exactly what happened, so others can understand how a family gathering spiraled into a legal nightmare. I'm Adam Walker, a 39-year-old architect living in Portland. I'm a single father, raising my 13-year-old son Noah, after my divorce from Claire 4 years ago. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment in the Pearl District, a modest space made comfortable with care, including a small studio where I work from home. My life is simple but purposeful. Every decision I make revolves around Noah's well-being. Today should have been a moment of celebration. Noah won first place in his school's music competition for an original song, a remarkable achievement after years of lessons, practice, and dedication. Watching him carry his guitar onto the stage, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. His talent, his perseverance, and his ability to stay calm under pressure were remarkable. On the drive home, he marveled at his small trophy. But beneath that joy, I could sense a quiet tension, a lingering memory of the Christmas gathering at my parents' home nearly 3 years ago. That event had planted seeds of resentment and envy within my family, a lesson that some blood ties are not worth preserving. In December 2024, I agreed to attend the Christmas party at my parents' house in Portland. It had been over a year since our last visit, and my mother had repeatedly urged me to bring Noah. She emphasized the importance of family connections, insisting that Noah shouldn't miss the tradition, though I often felt that her concern was more for appearances than for his safety. On the afternoon of December 24th, we arrived at my parents' comfortable, familiar house. Noah, then 11, gently clutched his Gibson guitar, occasionally stroking the case with reverence. Before we stepped out of the car, I looked at him and said softly, "If you feel uncomfortable, we can leave at any time." His small hand tightened around mine. "I'll be fine, Dad. I want to play for Grandma," he whispered. That moment, his bravery and excitement, mixed with nervousness, stayed with me. A reminder of the courage children can show, even in the face of tension. From the moment we walked in, the atmosphere was suffocating. Brandon, my older brother, and his wife Karen were seated with Patrick, Brandon's business partner, while Tyler, Brandon's son, wore his usual indifferent expression. My mother greeted us with an overly enthusiastic smile that didn't reach her eyes. Before Noah could respond to her praise about his scholarship at the Portland Music Center, Brandon's sarcasm cut sharply through the room. "So, the family prodigy has arrived. The world should pause to listen." Noah froze beside me, his small frame tense. I gently squeezed his shoulder, silently reassuring him that everything would be okay. The evening progressed under a veneer of forced civility. Brandon dominated conversations with tales of million-dollar contracts and business triumphs, with Patrick echoing him, reinforcing a sense of superiority that made the air thick with unease. Noah sat quietly, eyes fixed occasionally on his guitar in the corner. I knew he had agreed to come only because he wanted to perform, nothing more. After dinner, my mother announced, "Now Noah will play a song for us. I've been waiting for this moment." Encouraged by my nod, Noah stepped forward, carrying the Gibson. His fingers trembled as he prepared to play, taking a deep breath before starting a rearranged version of Silent Night. The room fell silent. My mother beamed. Tyler observed with curiosity. Only Brandon and Patrick exchanged smirks as Noah missed a note or two. Then, abruptly, Brandon waved him to stop. The living room went still. "Playing this horribly and calling this a prodigy?" Brandon shouted. Noah froze mid-chord, small fingers gripping the strings tightly. Before I could intervene, Brandon, intoxicated and furious, struck Noah across the face. Blood appeared at the corner of my son's lips. "You don't talk back to me," Brandon roared. Then, with shocking violence, he smashed the Gibson on the floor. The vintage instrument, a gift from my late grandfather Henry, shattered completely. Watching my child hurt and the guitar destroyed, I felt a surge of uncontrollable anger. I struck Brandon twice before Patrick could intervene. The room descended into chaos, fists and screams, until others finally restrained us. My parents looked on, stunned and judgmental. "You've lost your mind, Adam," my mother cried. I pointed to Noah and the broken guitar. "Brandon struck my child and destroyed Grandpa Henry's guitar. And you're worried about him?" My father dismissed it. "It's just a slap, and the guitar can be replaced. You overreacted." I pulled out my phone, hands trembling. "I will call 911. Assaulting a child and destroying property is not minor." Brandon's expression changed as he realized the police were coming. My parents tried to intervene, but I remained resolute. My son was hit until he bled. "This isn't about family business anymore," I said, dialing 911. Police and ambulance arrived. Officers documented Noah's injuries and the shattered guitar. Brandon was detained for assault and property destruction. Noah received immediate care, and I reassured him, "Let's wait for the ambulance outside, son." Later, at the police station, a social worker named Rachel helped Noah process the incident. I filed the formal report, ensuring that Noah's safety was prioritized. The moments after the incident felt surreal. Noah shivered in my arms, his small hand clutching the edge of his bloodied cheek. I could feel his fear radiating through him, the shock of being hit by someone he had trusted. I knew that my role now wasn't just as a father, but as a shield, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. The police arrived swiftly. 2 officers, a male and a female, assessed the situation with professional calm. The female officer knelt to Noah's level, introducing herself as Officer Emily Carter. "Hi, Noah. Can I look at your injury?" she asked gently. Noah nodded, seeking a sliver of reassurance from me, before letting her examine the scrape at the corner of his lips. She cleaned it carefully, applied an antibacterial bandage, and reassured us that the wound was minor but needed proper attention. While Officer Carter tended to Noah, Officer Davis went inside to gather statements from Brandon, my parents, and the other witnesses. I explained to Emily exactly what had happened: the strike, the destroyed guitar, and the emotional trauma inflicted. Noah, though still shaken, bravely recounted the event in his own words when asked. It was difficult to watch, knowing that this small, innocent child had to relive such an ordeal. Emily took photographs of Noah's injury and the pieces of the shattered Gibson guitar for evidence. Every fragment of that instrument represented a piece of history, my grandfather Henry's love of music, passed down to Noah, now reduced to splintered wood. Inside, Brandon continued to try defending his actions, but the officer's thorough documentation made it clear that this was far from a minor family squabble. Officer Davis returned outside, calm but firm. "Under state law, we must report complaints of child assault to Child Protective Services," he said. "They will investigate further." Officer Carter turned to me with a steady gaze. "Based on the evidence and witness statements, there's enough to detain Brandon for assault on a juvenile and deliberate property destruction. You and your son will need to come to the station to file formal reports. We can also arrange for a social worker to assist Noah." I nodded, grateful for their professionalism. "Yes, please. I believe it would help him tremendously." Brandon was escorted outside, visibly restrained but not shackled. His anger was palpable, and he shot me a glare full of venom. My parents followed, their expressions a mix of fear, disappointment, and confusion. My mother approached me, pleading, "Adam, can't you do this for the family? What about our reputation?" I looked down at Noah, bloodied and trembling, and gently shook my head. "Mom, I'm doing this for our little family, for Noah. If you can't understand that, I cannot help you." My father, standing at a distance, issued a chilling warning. "If you continue down this path, you will no longer be part of this family." His words cut deep, but I had made my choice. My priority was my son's safety and emotional well-being. We followed Officer Carter to the police station. Noah remained quiet, watching the city pass by the car window. After a few minutes, he asked softly, "Dad, are we in trouble?" I placed my hand on his shoulder. "No, son, we are not in danger. Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't." At the station, everything felt structured and methodical. Rachel, a social worker, greeted us with warmth, immediately putting Noah at ease. She led him to a child-friendly interview room while I filed the necessary paperwork with the officers. When I returned, Noah looked calmer. Though exhausted, Rachel reassured me that Noah had been cooperative and courageous during the interviews. Later, she took me aside. "Noah has reported both the events and his feelings clearly," she said softly. "I strongly recommend therapy to help him process the trauma." Her words resonated deeply. I had already begun to see the psychological weight of that night pressing down on my son. The loss of his treasured guitar, the sudden violence, the betrayal by family. I promised her I would ensure Noah received the support he needed. As we left the station, night had fallen. We couldn't drive home yet. The emotional shock and exhaustion made the thought of returning unbearable. We stayed at a nearby motel. On the small table, I carefully placed the remaining pieces of the Gibson guitar. Noah sat on the bed, silently staring at the splintered wood. After a long pause, he looked at me with tearful eyes. "Dad, now that Grandpa Henry is gone, and the guitar is gone, what's left to remember him?" I pulled him into my arms. "Emotionally, Noah. The memories, the lessons, the music in our hearts. No one can take that away." That night, as I watched him fall asleep, I understood that the road ahead would be challenging. Legal battles, emotional scars, and the work of restoring trust. But I also knew I had made the right decision. Protecting Noah, affirming his worth, and seeking justice were not just necessary, they were the only options. The weeks after that Christmas night were quiet but heavy. Noah withdrew from everything that reminded him of music. Even when I offered to get him a new guitar, he refused. The little Taylor I purchased to replace the Gibson sat untouched, gathering dust, while Noah clung to his memories and the fragments of Grandpa Henry's guitar stored carefully in a glass box. I enrolled Noah in therapy with Dr. Cooper. Each session was a small battle, not just for him, but for both of us. In the first few appointments, he would barely speak. When Dr. Cooper gently asked why he didn't want to play guitar anymore, tears rolled down his cheeks. "I don't want people to dislike me. I don't want to be hit anymore," he whispered, the words cutting through me deeper than any physical blow. I sat in the room silently, feeling both guilt and helplessness. My anger at Brandon still simmered, but I couldn't let that anger take root in Noah's heart. Dr. Cooper later explained gently, "Mr. Walker, your reaction was understandable. You defended your child as any parent should. But your son's trauma is real, and he needs support to process it." I realized then that protecting Noah wasn't just about preventing physical harm. It was about restoring his sense of safety and confidence. Each therapy session became a bridge between fear and courage. Gradually, Noah began to speak about his emotions, his sense of loss, and the pain of seeing something so precious destroyed. He talked about the Gibson guitar, not as an object, but as a connection to Grandpa Henry. A symbol of encouragement and love that had shaped his earliest steps into music. Flashbacks of Grandpa Henry often accompanied our therapy sessions. I remembered the summer of 2020, when 7-year-old Noah first touched Grandpa Henry's old guitar. Most adults would have scolded a child for handling an instrument, but Grandpa Henry smiled. "Do you want me to teach you a song?" he asked. That single moment lit a spark in Noah. Even amidst the scorn from Brandon, who had made snide remarks about Noah's talent and mine. Grandpa Henry's encouragement was unwavering. He showed Noah the basic chords, gently guiding the small fingers, instilling patience, confidence, and joy. Those lessons, filled with love and understanding, became the foundation of Noah's musical journey. A journey that would have been snuffed out if not for my insistence on protecting him that Christmas night. Grandpa Henry's gift of the vintage Gibson J45, his most cherished instrument, was more than just a guitar. When I brought it to him at the hospital during his final days, his frail hands trembling, he whispered, "Music gives you a voice no one can take away." Noah, only 9 at the time, held the guitar with reverence, promising to care for it. it became a bridge connecting generations, a tangible expression of love, trust, and shared passion. The loss of that guitar, destroyed in Brandon's violent act, hit both Noah and me deeply. But the therapy sessions slowly helped him understand that the essence of Grandpa Henry's teachings couldn't be broken. The music, the encouragement, and the joy of creation lived on inside him. During those weeks, I also reflected on my relationship with Brandon. From our teenage years, Brandon had been the favored child, groomed to inherit the family construction business, while I pursued architecture and creative endeavors deemed impractical by our parents. Every success of mine was met with mockery. Even when I graduated college and began designing real projects, Brandon ridiculed my achievements. He had always found a way to belittle me, to twist family gatherings into showcases of his superiority. Christmas gatherings became exercises in endurance. I remembered the evening when I first noticed the depth of his resentment toward me. Brandon's sarcastic commentary and my parents' silent approval stung far deeper than any slap could. Yet Grandpa Henry's quiet support was a reminder of what truly mattered: integrity, passion, and love. Those values guided me through the events of that fateful Christmas, helping me focus on protecting Noah rather than engaging in endless family drama. As the therapy sessions progressed, I began to see a spark in Noah again. One afternoon, while I was at my drawing table in the apartment studio, Noah stood quietly at the doorway, observing the sketches of musical compositions I had spread out. After several moments, he asked softly, "Dad, can we go to Grandpa Henry's lake house? I want to see his music drawings again." My heart leapt. Weeks of silence and fear were giving way to curiosity and a renewed interest in music. I smiled, trying to hide the rush of emotion. "Of course, son. This weekend we'll go together." His eyes lit up, the first real sign that healing was underway. Even as Noah began to reconnect with music, I knew the road ahead would be long. Therapy, court appearances, and rebuilding trust in family dynamics were only part of the process. But the sight of my son asking to see his grandfather's compositions reassured me that he was slowly finding his strength again, reclaiming his confidence, and beginning to heal. 3 months after that fateful Christmas night, Brandon's trial finally began. By then, the police investigation had been completed, evidence meticulously gathered, and statements from every witness recorded. The images of Noah's injuries, photographs of the shattered Gibson guitar, and detailed accounts from family and medical personnel were all prepared for presentation. I chose to attend the trial alone, leaving Noah at home with Claire. I did not want him exposed to the anger, resentment, and tension in the courtroom. Even though we were divorced, Claire and I had learned to prioritize Noah's well-being above all else, setting aside personal grievances for his safety and emotional stability. I arrived early, wearing my most formal suit, the weight of anticipation pressing down on me. Brandon was already seated, appearing thinner, pale, and more anxious than I had ever seen him. Behind him, my parents sat rigidly, expressions carefully controlled, as if attending a somber event rather than a trial. The rest of the courtroom was filled with observers, quietly waiting for proceedings to unfold. The trial itself was professional and orderly. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically: photographs of Noah's facial injuries, the broken Gibson guitar, and testimony from medical personnel and witnesses. I testified honestly, recounting every detail of that night, while striving to maintain composure. I described Brandon's sudden attack, the violence inflicted upon my son, and the destruction of a treasured family heirloom. My voice remained steady, even though inside I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sorrow, and a deep responsibility to protect Noah. Brandon and his defense attorney attempted to frame the assault as a spontaneous reaction, a momentary loss of control with no intent to injure. But the evidence was overwhelming. The photographs, the witness testimonies, and the corroborated timeline all painted a clear picture. This was not a minor lapse in judgment. It was an act of deliberate aggression. During cross-examination, Brandon's lawyer tried to minimize his actions, implying that family conflicts were normal and suggesting I had provoked him. I listened quietly, letting the facts speak for themselves. The court, with all its formal procedures and meticulous attention to evidence, made it clear that the protection of a child's well-being could not be dismissed as a family dispute. After hours of testimony, deliberation, and presentations, the judge delivered the verdict. Brandon was convicted on charges of child assault and malicious damage of valuable property. The courtroom fell silent as the punishment was announced. 5 years in prison and $195,000 in restitution. Brandon erupted in fury upon hearing the judgment. Pointing at me, he shouted, "Are you happy now? You've ruined my life. You're not my brother anymore." Court officers quickly intervened, detaining him as the judge demanded order. The courtroom's tension remained palpable even as the verdict was finalized. The compensation was itemized clearly: $45,000 for the vintage Gibson guitar, representing its market value and sentimental significance, and $150,000 for Noah's psychological trauma, therapy expenses, and the emotional toll of the assault. I nodded solemnly, accepting the ruling and understanding the court's reasoning. While my own reaction on Christmas night had involved physical violence, which the judge admonished as inappropriate, the central focus remained on justice for my son. After the trial concluded and Brandon was escorted away, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief because Noah would no longer be directly threatened by his uncle. Sorrow because the family fractures were irreparable and reconciliation seemed impossible. Outside the courthouse, my parents and relatives confronted me. My mother, eyes red from crying, approached cautiously. "Adam, what have you done? You've put your brother in prison. Our family will never be the same," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of grief and anger. My father, stern and unyielding, walked forward and said plainly, "Adam, you're no longer a member of this family." Other relatives criticized my actions. Aunt Linda shook her head, asking, "How could you do this to your family?" Uncle Frank declared, "Family handles its own matters. Taking it to court is dishonor." Despite the verbal onslaught, I remained silent, steadfast in the knowledge that I had acted in Noah's best interest. Unexpectedly, support emerged from unlikely quarters. Cousin Olivia stepped between me and my critics, her voice firm. "Enough. Brandon struck an 11-year-old child and destroyed a family heirloom. Adam did the right thing." Her husband, Mark, also voiced agreement, emphasizing that Noah's safety should be the priority. Their support, though limited, reinforced my conviction. It reminded me that standing up for justice often meant standing alone, but it was the right course of action. I thanked those who supported me and departed, my heart heavy but resolute. When we returned home, Noah was in the living room with Claire, playing his new Taylor guitar. The sound of music, once stilled by fear and trauma, filled our apartment. Claire's gentle glance reassured me that while the path had been painful, the outcome had preserved the most important thing: Noah's safety and his love for music. Noah looked up as I entered, concern evident in his eyes. "Dad, how did everything go?" he asked quietly. I sat beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Son, Uncle Brandon will face the consequences of his actions. He won't hurt you again," I said. Noah leaned into my side and, after a long pause, said, "I'm not happy he has to go to prison, but I'm glad he understands he can't hurt others." At that moment, I understood something crucial. Justice wasn't about vengeance or family reputation. It was about teaching responsibility, protecting the vulnerable, and setting boundaries. The trial had reinforced this lesson for both Noah and me. In the weeks following Brandon's trial, our lives slowly began to return to a new normal, though the emotional wounds were far from healed. Noah had endured more than any child should, and I realized that while the legal system had enforced justice, the real work, rebuilding trust, security, and confidence, was only beginning. At first, Noah refused to touch any musical instruments. Even the Taylor guitar I had purchased to replace Grandpa Henry's Gibson sat untouched, gathering dust in the corner of our living room. Every time I offered to let him play, he would shake his head, eyes downcast, muttering softly, "I don't want people to dislike me. I don't want to be hit again." Hearing those words shattered me. The boy's fear was deep, and no court verdict could immediately erase the trauma he had endured. I arranged therapy sessions with Dr. Cooper, a compassionate child psychologist experienced in trauma recovery. In our first few appointments, Noah was reluctant to speak, often withdrawing or staring silently at the floor. But gradually, with patient guidance, he began to recount his feelings and the events that had hurt him. One day, through quiet tears, he confessed, "I miss Grandpa Henry's guitar, but I'm scared that if I play again, people will laugh at me." Those words reminded me that trauma isn't just about physical pain. It lingers, shaping thoughts, behavior, and self-perception. I sat beside him, holding his small hands and reassuring him, "Noah, no one can take away the music inside you. Grandpa Henry gave you more than a guitar. He gave you the ability to create, to express, and to feel. That can never be broken." Even with gentle encouragement, recovery was a slow process. Some days, he refused to leave his room. Other days, the sight of the Taylor guitar would bring back tears. I watched him, trying to remain patient, knowing that pushing him too quickly would only deepen his fears. Over time, small breakthroughs began to occur. One afternoon, while I was working in my modest home studio, Noah quietly appeared at the doorway. He stood for several minutes, his eyes scanning the design sketches on my desk, before asking softly, "Dad, may I look at Grandpa Henry's music drawings again? The ones at the lake house?" My heart leapt. After weeks of silence and avoidance, he was showing initiative, curiosity, and a desire to reconnect with his love of music. I smiled, swallowing the rush of emotion, and said gently, "Of course, son. This weekend we'll go together." When we arrived at the lake house, the old wooden floors creaked beneath our steps, and the air smelled faintly of aged wood and inked musical notes. Noah wandered through the rooms, eyes wide, discovering hidden sketches, compositions, and notebooks spanning decades. Each sheet was a window into Grandpa Henry's life, his struggles, inspirations, and the passion that had defined him. Sitting together on the floor, Noah picked up one of the yellowed pages and whispered, "Dad, I feel like Grandpa Henry is still here with us. That moment felt like a turning point. The music, the notes, and the memories were more than relics. They were tools for healing. I pulled Noah close, holding him tightly. In that embrace, I understood the true legacy Grandpa Henry had left. Not material possessions, but the freedom to pursue passion, the courage to create, and the joy of sharing one's talents. As weeks turned into months, Noah slowly began playing music again, first tentatively on the Taylor guitar, then with increasing confidence. I watched him, marveling at his resilience. Though scars remained, both emotional and physical, he was reclaiming the sense of safety and joy that had been stolen on that Christmas night. Our home, once just an apartment in Portland, had transformed into a sanctuary. Every corner, every object, carried memories of pain, resilience, and love. The broken Gibson guitar pieces, carefully preserved in a glass box, served not as reminders of loss, but as symbols of strength, perseverance, and the importance of standing up for oneself. Amidst this recovery, my thoughts often turned to my parents. Though Brandon was behind bars, they had still failed to acknowledge the severity of his actions, prioritizing family reputation over my son's well-being. In the past 3 months, my mother had begun showing up unannounced with small gifts for Noah, or homemade cookies. Each time, I refused to let her see him, unsure if reconciliation was possible, or even wise. I wrestled with difficult questions. Should I confront them, insist they respect our boundaries, and explain the harm they caused? Or should I sever contact entirely, shielding Noah from the toxic influence of those who had failed him? These decisions weighed heavily on me, for they were not simply about pride or resentment. They were about protecting my son's ongoing recovery. Half of me wanted Noah to know his extended family, to connect with relatives who might provide love and support. But the other half, scarred by the Christmas incident and its aftermath, urged caution. The priority was his safety, his confidence, and his ability to heal without being re-traumatized. Every evening, as Noah strummed lightly on his Taylor guitar, I reminded myself why these choices mattered. Music had always been a refuge for him, a bridge to his grandfather, and a way to process emotions he could not yet express in words. I knew that my role was to protect that space, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. Though the path forward remained uncertain, one thing was clear. Noah's resilience and spirit had survived the darkest moments. With patience, love, and support, we would continue to rebuild, step by step, note by note. And in doing so, I would ensure that my son's heart and his music would never again be subjected to harm. The weeks after the trial were a delicate balancing act. Noah was slowly returning to normalcy, but the world outside our apartment still felt fragile. School had resumed, and though his teachers were understanding, I noticed subtle changes in his behavior. Hesitation to participate in group activities, a quietness that wasn't typical for him, and a nervous glance when certain classmates laughed or shouted. I knew he was still processing the trauma from that Christmas night, even while beginning to reclaim his sense of joy through music. Returning to music became our daily ritual. Each evening, after finishing my work in the studio, I would sit with Noah as he practiced the songs Grandpa Henry had once taught him. Initially, he needed reassurance for every chord, every note, but gradually, as the days passed, his confidence began to grow. He even began improvising, creating melodies that reflected his own feelings, hesitant yet bold, fragile yet strong. It was a visible sign that the boy was not broken. He was healing. School and music were only part of the equation. Emotional support was equally vital. Noah continued his sessions with Dr. Cooper, who helped him navigate the complex mix of fear, anger, and grief he felt. In one session, Noah shared, "Dad, I'm scared if I play in front of people again, they might laugh, like Brandon did." I listened, holding his hands, and said gently, "Noah, the people who love you won't laugh. You can trust the music you create. It belongs to you, and I'll always be here to protect you." Slowly, he began to see that the world outside our home could be safe, and that not everyone would hurt him or his music. While supporting Noah, I also had to confront the reality of my parents' attempts to reinsert themselves into our lives. Over the past few months, my mother had begun showing up at our apartment unannounced, bringing small gifts, toys, or cookies, often the kind Noah liked as a younger child. Each visit was a test, a challenge to my patience and judgment. I had to decide whether to allow contact, confront them about their past behavior, or completely cut ties. I scheduled a calm, honest conversation with them, making it clear that our boundaries were non-negotiable. I told them, my parents, I want to be clear. Noah's safety and emotional well-being come first. Any visits or contact must respect our rules and limits. No sudden appearances, no disregard for his trauma. If you cannot abide by this, there will be no contact. It was a tense conversation. My father remained stoic, his eyes cold, silently judging me. My mother seemed conflicted, a mixture of regret and defensiveness in her expression. I could tell that my stance was hard for them to accept, but I also knew it was necessary. Noah's healing had to take priority, even if it meant disappointing them. As the months passed, we began exploring new routines that fostered security and stability. Weekend trips to the lake house became regular, giving Noah a sense of continuity and connection to Grandpa Henry's legacy. We would spend hours reading through his musical sketches, experimenting with compositions, and learning songs together. Music became a language for us, a way to communicate when words failed. Noah also returned to school music programs, slowly reintegrating into ensemble performances. Each rehearsal and performance was a challenge, but he faced them with growing confidence. I could see the joy returning to his eyes as he played with peers who appreciated and respected his talent. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of normalcy and hope. At home, we created a space of safety and creativity. His room became a mini studio with instruments, music sheets, and recording equipment arranged neatly. The broken Gibson remained in its glass display, not as a symbol of trauma, but as a reminder of resilience and the lessons learned. That justice matters, boundaries must be respected, and courage can emerge from even the darkest moments. Throughout this process, I reflected on fatherhood and the responsibility it carried. Protecting Noah meant more than shielding him from immediate danger. It meant creating an environment where he could grow, explore, and regain trust in the world. Every decision, from legal actions to boundaries with my parents, was guided by one principle: his safety, dignity, and well-being came first. And while the path forward remained uncertain, there was hope. Noah's laughter returned in small doses, his creativity blossomed, and his music grew stronger each day. We had survived the worst of our storm, and together we were beginning to rebuild not just our lives, but our sense of trust, joy, and freedom. As the months rolled on, it became clear that protecting Noah meant more than shielding him from immediate danger. It meant guiding him through the complexities of growing up, especially after trauma. Adolescence was already a challenging period, but compounded with what had happened, it required a careful, supportive approach. School remained a delicate environment. Although his peers were largely unaware of the Christmas incident, Noah carried subtle fears and insecurities. Group projects, music ensembles, and even casual interactions could trigger anxiety. I learned to watch for small cues, hesitant gestures, quick glances, or a sudden withdrawal. These were signals that he might need reassurance. In response, I encouraged him gently. "You don't have to be perfect, Noah. You just need to be you. Your music, your voice, your ideas, they all matter." Gradually, he began to internalize this message, and I saw small sparks of confidence returning. Music became our anchor. The lake house weekends continued, now with structured creative sessions. Noah and I would spend hours exploring Grandpa Henry's old notebooks, learning songs he had written and improvising melodies together. Each session wasn't just about technique. It was about building trust, patience, and resilience. When Noah stumbled over a chord or struggled with rhythm, I reminded him, mistakes are part of learning. What matters is you keep playing. This philosophy extended beyond music, shaping how he approached challenges in school and social settings. Meanwhile, the question of extended family loomed large. My parents' intermittent attempts to contact us tested the boundaries I had set. Each unannounced visit or gift brought up memories of betrayal and neglect, but I realized that my response would determine Noah's sense of safety. I decided that any interaction had to be controlled, scheduled, and respectful of our rules. "Mom, any visit must be agreed upon in advance," I said firmly one afternoon when she showed up at our apartment with cookies. "No surprises. Noah's comfort comes first. If you cannot respect that, there will be no visits." My mother's expression softened slightly, but I knew she was struggling with the limits I had imposed. The legal aftermath of Brandon's actions remained a quiet background hum. While he was serving his sentence, the psychological impact of that night lingered. Noah had moments of fear and anger, flashbacks of Brandon's aggression, or the crushing weight of family betrayal. Dr. Cooper continued to work with him, helping him articulate his emotions and rebuild trust. One day, Noah admitted, "Dad, I don't want to think about that night, but I also want to remember the music Grandpa taught me. I want to feel safe again." That statement reinforced the importance of creating an environment of consistency and security. At home, our routines became ritualistic and comforting. Morning practice, homework, family meals, and evening reflection sessions helped Noah regain a sense of normalcy. We also incorporated creative projects beyond music, storytelling, drawing, and architectural sketches, which allowed him to explore his talents without judgment or pressure. Every success, no matter how small, was celebrated, reinforcing his confidence. Through all of this, I also had to navigate my own emotions. Anger, guilt, and frustration surfaced repeatedly. I questioned my decisions. Should I have left the party sooner? Could I have prevented the attack without violence? Was my response setting the right example for Noah? Dr. Cooper reminded me that while self-reflection is important, the priority was not dwelling on what could have been avoided, but ensuring Noah's future security and growth. Extended family interactions, even indirect ones, remained a challenge. Holidays, birthdays, and other gatherings became decisions weighed carefully against potential emotional harm. I wanted Noah to have a sense of extended family, but not at the cost of his mental health. Conversations about these decisions became teaching moments. Noah, sometimes you have to protect yourself from people who don't respect your boundaries. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself and your happiness. Slowly, he began to understand and internalize this. The experience reshaped my perspective on parenting, family, and justice. Protecting Noah wasn't about shielding him from the world entirely. It was about empowering him to navigate it safely, with confidence, and with a clear understanding of boundaries and consequences. It was about teaching him resilience, patience, and self-worth in a world that could sometimes be harsh and unfair. Even with these structures in place, life was not without moments of doubt. I wrestled with questions about future contact with my parents, the lingering shadow of Brandon's actions, and the social dynamics at school. But each day, as I watched Noah engage with his music, laugh, and grow, I felt reassured that we were moving forward. Together, we were building not just recovery, but a foundation for a life defined by security, creativity, and trust. As winter turned to early spring, the legal process began in earnest. Brandon's arrest set the stage, but the weeks leading up to the trial were heavy with tension. Every day was a mix of anticipation, anxiety, and careful planning. I knew Noah needed stability more than ever, so I kept our routines consistent: school, music practice, and quiet evenings at home. But the looming court dates were never far from my mind. The day the trial started, arriving at the courthouse, I felt the familiar weight of formality and tension. Brandon sat with his lawyer, his expression thin and wary, clearly different from the cocky man I had confronted months before. My parents were present as well, along with a few other relatives. Their expressions were stern and somber, as though preparing for a funeral rather than a legal proceeding. The trial proceeded swiftly. Evidence was presented systematically: photos of Noah's injury, images of the shattered Gibson guitar, and witness statements. When asked to testify, I recounted every detail with clarity and precision, ensuring my emotions supported rather than clouded the facts. Brandon and his attorney attempted to frame the attack as a spur-of-the-moment reaction, arguing he had no intention to cause serious harm. But the overwhelming evidence, including Noah's statements and physical proof, left little room for doubt. Noah's voice, though absent in the courtroom, echoed in my mind as I spoke. His trembling courage that night, the way he had stood up, and the moments of fear he endured. Each recollection strengthened my resolve to see justice done. After deliberation, the verdict was delivered. Brandon was convicted of child assault and malicious destruction of property. The court sentenced him to 5 years in prison and ordered $195,000 in restitution. The sum included compensation for the guitar, psychological treatment for Noah, and damages for emotional distress. Brandon reacted with rage. Pointing at me, he spat, "Are you happy now? You've ruined my life. You're not my brother anymore." Court officers acted quickly, detaining him before the situation escalated further. The judge addressed me directly, cautioning that while my actions in defending Noah were understandable, violence was not legally acceptable. I accepted this warning, knowing that my instinct to protect my child had crossed the line, though in my mind it had been necessary to stop further harm. After the trial, The emotional aftermath was palpable. My parents confronted me, their anger and disbelief sharp. "Adam, what have you done? You've put your brother in prison. Our family will never be the same," my mother said, her eyes red from crying. My father's words were cold and absolute. "Adam, you are no longer a member of this family." Even among relatives, criticism came swiftly. Yet there were unexpected voices of support. Cousin Olivia stood firmly by my side, stating, "Brandon struck a child and destroyed a family heirloom. Adam acted to protect his son. He did the right thing." Uncle Steve, my father's younger brother, also offered quiet support, reminding my father that protecting a child was more important than preserving appearances. These affirmations, though in the minority, gave me reassurance. I had lost part of my family, yes, but I had protected Noah and upheld a sense of justice. Driving home, I felt a mixture of grief and relief. For the first time in months, I allowed myself a small sense of hope. Noah was safe. Brandon would face consequences, and slowly, life could begin to stabilize again. Back at home, Noah had already resumed playing his new Taylor guitar. Hearing him fill the apartment with music reminded me of why every difficult choice had been necessary. His focus, joy, and resilience symbolized the beginning of true healing, not just for him, but for both of us. Life after the trial was not instant peace. It was a slow, uneven recalibration. The world did not magically fix itself just because a judge signed papers and a gavel slammed. There were waves of quiet days, then days where out of nowhere Noah would freeze at a loud noise, or drop his guitar pick because his hands shook, or ask me if Brandon would someday come out angry and try to finish what he started. I never lied to him. I didn't sugarcoat it. I said he will face consequences for his choices, and I will always protect you. Always. That was the only promise that mattered. For months after, we built new routines around intentional healing. Not survival, healing. We did sunrise walks at the waterfront on weekends. We started journaling every night. I wrote, Noah drew notes and chord shapes. We made small rituals to anchor safety in the home. Music at dinner, gratitude before bed, gym nights, movie nights. His therapist, Dr. Cooper, commented that Noah wasn't just recovering. He was rebuilding identity. And I realized, so was I. Because the truth was, I also lost something. I lost the illusion that blood automatically means loyalty. I lost the illusion that family is always safe. But I also gained clarity on the type of father I would be moving forward. Boundaries became non-negotiable pillars. I stopped letting my parents randomly show up. I stopped offering explanations. I stopped trying to repair what they refused to take accountability for. If they wanted to be part of Noah's life, they needed to respect our boundaries and show remorse for minimizing violence. They needed to stop pretending everything was a misunderstanding. Until then, distance was required. Distance became necessary. Noah slowly returned to music class. His teacher sent me videos where Noah played a solo with his eyes closed, not looking at anyone, not performing for anyone, just feeling. That made me cry privately in my car, because that was music again. Not fear, not shame, not trauma. Music. One evening, while packing away his Taylor guitar after practice, Noah suddenly said, "Dad, I think I want to play at the school spring concert. Not for other people, but for Grandpa Henry. For us, I froze, because that was the exact moment I knew we were finally crossing out of the shadow of that night. He wasn't trying to prove anything to the world anymore. He wasn't trying to erase what happened. He was reclaiming his voice. He was choosing. This is where the healing truly becomes permanent. Pain didn't vanish. It just transformed. And Noah was learning he had control over what shape it took. I stood there, hand on his shoulder, and said, "Okay, then we prepare. And when that day comes, I'll be in the front row." And for the first time since Christmas, Noah smiled without sadness in his eyes. The gym was packed. Parents, students, teachers, folding chairs, string lights taped along the walls. The normal chaotic noise of a school music night. But for Noah, this night wasn't about performance. It was about reclaiming space. He stood backstage quietly tuning his Taylor guitar. No shaking hands, no rapid breathing, just focus, steady, intentional. He ran his fingers along the ridges of the new wood with this subtle reverence, like it was an instrument of memory, not fear. Before his name was called, he looked at me and whispered, "I'm doing this for Grandpa Henry, and for the kid I was before that night." I swallowed hard. It was soft, warm, emotional fingerstyle. The kind Grandpa Henry used to play in front of the fireplace Christmas mornings. The same piece Noah watched him play when he was 5. The room didn't breathe. Halfway through, I saw Noah open his eyes, not scared anymore, but anchored, present, owning his moment, owning his music, owning his life again. When the final chord rang out, it wasn't applause that broke me. It was the silence before the applause. That moment where everyone in the room felt something and didn't know how to react for half a second. Then the room exploded. People stood up. His teacher's jaw dropped. Someone in the back yelled his name. But Noah didn't look at them. He walked right to me. No hesitation. No freezing. He hugged me tight and said, "See? I'm okay now." And I believed him, not because everything was magically perfect, but because he chose not to live inside that night anymore. He chose music again. He chose himself again. That was the real ending, not the trial, not the punishment, not the trauma. The ending was Noah writing his own chapter again, in his own rhythm, with his own hands. And I realized that night, healing isn't the absence of pain. Healing is the return of choice. And my son finally had his choice back.